Hello there, my name is Rebecca Machelli and this is Coffee First. Let's dive in. It is such a thrill to be back here for season 4 of the Coffee First podcast. We will be diving into a topic that touches countless lives, often silently, and that is substance use and addiction. I'm incredibly fortunate to be joined by a man who knows this world not just professionally but personally. Bill Bekunda is a recovered alcoholic and he is now a beacon of hope for others. He's an addiction recovery coach and a behavioral health consultant with BekundaCare, dedicating his life to helping individuals break free from the chains of addiction. Thank you so much for joining us on the Coffee Fast podcast, Bill. However, I just want us to kick off this conversation by you sharing a bit about your personal struggle with addiction. What exactly you went through and how exactly you were able to come out of that? What was the biggest motivating factor that drove you to seek help?
I will start by saying that I wasn't driven to seek help. I was forced to get help. And when I was forced to get help, that's when I realized what my problem was. And that's how the change began. But taking it back a little bit, I was born in a comfortable family. I didn't really have much stresses apart from the usual. My mom has refused to buy me this. My dad doesn't want me to do this. Nothing big, the ones they call a spoiled child's
Yes, you're the
needs.
planned children.
Planned kids. School, I was a good enough student because I usually topped the class. I actually finishing my primary leaving examinations, I was the best in my district. Went to the school of my choice. I was, what do you call it? A good boy when I joined my senior one because I was the kind who didn't tolerate all this bad behavior, smoking, drinking, escaping from school. And I used to talk to some of my friends whom I had noticed had started these things and tell them how it's not good. Concentrate on your studies. And for that year, I was fine. So I joined my senior two. I continued performing well until a group of boys convinced me to go with them, see how they do their things. It was such an inviting request because it's like the cool guys, the top boys in my class
Yeah.
were actually convincing me. I felt good, like, let me go with these guys. But the main intention was to go see their mess. The next day, I would have evidence of how foolish what they're doing is. But when I reached there, because of the fear, and then I see them drinking, and I'm like, okay, let me just drink for now so that I can get out of this fear. The rest is history, I may say. My first sip tasted bad, smelled bad, made me cough. But by the time it was hitting my stomach, I was feeling good. And I started realizing that I missed out of this life. When I went back to school, I did the most daring things like walking into the A-level wing, giving guys high fives. I had so much to talk about. There was no fear. And they were seeing the difference between the bookworm and this new guy. So when I wake up the next morning, I knew instinctively that there are problems. But on the other hand, it turned out to be different. I was a hero. It's like everyone decided to like me overnight. So from that time forward, I developed the obsession. I developed the obsession to drink again. It was all that was on my mind. When am I going back? My last best position was the third in my class, and the following position went to the 25th, which wouldn't be bad, but my father asked me a question. Why is number 3 among 25? It didn't make sense to him. And, fast forward, senior 4, I got my first suspension. Senior 6, I got an expulsion. I left the country to study abroad. When I came back to Uganda, they were even doubting if I had studied, if I got any education, because how does an educated person black out in the garden, in a bar, smoke like there's no tomorrow, drink like alcohol is going to get finished in the bar or in the brewery.
Right.
So it was not, they couldn't understand it. A point where the questions were, what has happened to him? And then others came up with their own theories. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe something happened to him that he doesn't want to talk about. I was prescribed some medications. I saw psychiatrists. I saw psychologists. They tried to convince me to get into a treatment center, which I refused. And I will tell you that at the age of 25, I had made up my mind to stop drinking and smoking on that day. But from morning to about 10 p.m., I was sober. Then the bright idea came, which was, since it's already 10 and you want to stop at the end of the day, taking just 2 beers won't be a bad idea. After all, it's your birthday. So I went with the intention of taking 2, but I woke up the next day drunk. And I can tell you the truth, between the age of 25 and 30, I don't remember anything much because I wasn't working. I was just drinking day in, day out until the day when I think it was too much and I was taken into a treatment center. So I was taken by force. After about 2 weeks, that's when I came to the realization of what was my problem. And then my recovery journey began from there.
There's quite a number of elements that you've shared. I wish we could just unpack. I want to start with the misconceptions that are around substance use. And I believe one of the hindrances to people being able to get the right treatment, or even that's a fueling factor for the stigma around addiction and substance use, is the ignorance that lies around the misconceptions in society. People believe that addiction or
Yeah.
substance use disorder has a template, that it attacks the rich. Other people say people who drink
Mm,
like that, that's called poor drinking. Then there are other people who say,
mm,
just like how can someone who studied here and here, how can this happen to such and such a
mm.
person? How do you think that we can be able as a society to shift the perspective around such misconceptions?
Well, there is a lot of learning to do. People have absolutely no clue what addictions are. They believe it's just moral decadence, or they believe a person is just weak or irresponsible, or adamant. They'll label you with all that kind of thing. People have no idea. We say, I don't know if I can use words like in Uganda, like yekoza, you
Yes.
know, that they're pretending. In fact, for me, they used to tell me that you go and drink so that you can come and tell us certain thing. You go and drink so that you can behave in a certain way. And I tell them no. And then there's also the misunderstanding. I wake up in the morning, I've done some crazy stuff, and I say, I promise, I would even swear, I would even get a Bible. I don't know what I wouldn't do, that I'll never do it again. I'll never drink again. Unfortunately, they didn't believe me, and they always say, but you told us that yesterday. But the truth is, I was actually meaning every word. Now, when the cravings would kick in, even later in the same day, I would give in to them. So I didn't understand my problem. They didn't understand my problem. So in families now, they don't understand each other. The addict, the person who is suffering an addiction is equally as confused about their problem as the family, the loved one. Everyone is trying to devise their own means of solving this situation. That only increases the confusion. And the confusion is so much because in the family, there is someone who is trying to cover up things. There is someone who is trying to create a scapegoat. There is someone who is, who has gotten angry with the situation and just blasts everybody. Then there is the enabler. And so, everyone is having their own input, which causes even more confusion. So until people learn to know what the problem is, how it is caused, to remove the blame from maybe it was caused by so and so, maybe it is the mother, the father, maybe they had spoiled them, they gave them too much, maybe they gave them too little. Some people kept on asking me, or even today they keep telling me, but Bill, why don't you tell us that thing? Did your father or your mother, did they traumatize you? And I'm like, guys, I had the happiest family. And they're still looking for that something which they think you are hiding. We need to educate people about what it is, first and foremost. People need to understand that the person remains a normal person. It is just that under the conditions of the change in the mental structure, they are now pulled towards a particular behavior. They adapt a new behavior. And when you adapt a new behavior and you don't even know what behavior that is, there is really nothing you can do. So the majority of people surrounding the person suffering an addiction make the addiction worse. They also don't trust the professionals. That is something people need to be educated about. Everyone will take their car the moment they find or they hear anything that sounds uncertain. Even if you're closing the door and you hear like a creak, they
Yes.
will call a mechanic.
Mm.
Now, when it comes to a human being who is more complicated, why do you want to solve it yourself? You see? So we need to teach them to understand that the same way you look after your house, when you see a crack in the wall, you will not get the cement and try to fill the crack. You will look for a mason to come and fix your house. A leaking roof. The same with human beings. We need to get professionals to deal with them because the professionals are in abundance, especially if we talk about Kampala here. They're training every year, many of them here in Butavika Hospital.
Yes.
But people underlook them. So that is the most important thing, to teach them. Once you teach them, then you can get to the stage of engaging them. Because we have engaged, but it's like, people want it to be a trend. They want something cool. That's all they're talking about. Depression, stress, depression,
Right.
anxiety, bipolar, ADHD. People need to be taught about what it is, what it becomes, and how you can actually solve the problem.
I think where we have gone wrong is affirming mental health disorders instead of actually directing people
Yeah,
to the fact that they need help. As you said, there's a point where in the
exactly.
last decade it's become
Yes.
cool to be not healthy mentally. People even add a
Yes.
possessive noun at the beginning. They say, my this, my depression, my anxiety,
Mhm.
my addiction, my alcoholism, and I think that
Yes.
it's a personal initiative that people need to take. And when it comes down to
Mhm.
substance use disorder, especially alcoholism, which I can freely speak about, I feel that many people justify their use of alcohol and, well, drugs simply by reason of the fact that they feel that they see no negative or adverse effects manifesting in their life yet, So a
Mhm.
person will go for, especially corporate middle class, if my family is
Yeah.
fed, I can drink as much as I want, I can party as much as I want. If my money is still coming through, if I still have my job, everything is okay. I wanted you to speak into what are some of the early warning signs that someone might actually be developing a substance use disorder.
Ah, people don't like this one. People don't want to be identified as having a problem. And usually this is where you get cut short. When a person starts using in a questionable manner, if anybody looks at the person and says, aren't you drinking too much? Aren't you smoking a little bit too much?
Right.
Aren't you staying out too late? You know those simple questions. It is nothing complicated. Okay, I'll come back early tonight. And then the same night, he comes back at 4 in the morning. What happened? I just drank a little extra. That, I think, is the first sign that a person is developing a problem. There are questions surrounding the person's use. The second would be when a person starts getting defensive about their behavior, right? Because usually at that time they are not attacked for using, they are attacked for what they do when they use. But can't you see it's making you sick? Those are
Mm.
withdrawals. I try to avoid using the sweet words people like using to train. But when a person cannot stick to their word, yesterday you came and you are so abusive. I am sorry, I just took a little bit too much. But why don't you stop? I am going to stop. Then it goes to the next phase where someone say, don't disturb me. I can change when I want to. It is you who is stressing me. So it now shifts from explanation to blame that you. Now it is as escalating. Those are the early warning signs. Now we see this every day. Then, of course, there are things like the obvious ones. If it's a young teenager, probably, or preteen, then they're avoidant. They cannot come near you. They don't want to sit near you. There is something they're hiding. When you look into their eyes, they look down.
Yes.
I usually tell parents, don't allow your child to look down because teenagers actually believe when you look in their eyes, you're actually going to see what they are doing. You see, because the prefrontal cortex has not yet developed. So their thinking is action through the
Yes.
amygdala, direct. So for them, they think you're reading them. And because we have passed through that stage, usually you'll tell your child, if you do this, this will happen. Now, when they do it and it happens, it is like you have seen through them.
Right.
So being avoidant, staying away, not interactive. There is also locking yourself away. Another big sign is when somebody does not want you to touch their stuff. If it's a teenager, don't come in my room, don't check my books. For adults, they have no-go zones. You know, you leave my stuff, you put it there, I'll deal with it. Don't check my glove compartment. Being lazy, no longer following routine as they used to, losing money, losing weight or becoming disheveled, always being sick or claiming being to be sick, not being productive enough at work or at school, changing friends, very important, because you'll see that they'll start downgrading and they're no longer with their peers, they're now with,
Yes.
you know, all those, there are so many signs that people see. What I like to tell families or people to understand is that the moment you start seeing something, or your instinct is telling you that something isn't right, something is not right. And when it is not right, find out.
I wanted to talk about something that has recently come to light. Very recently, a
Mm,
video surfaced on social media of a young girl who was arrested trying to steal a side mirror in the streets. I think she was, I'm not sure, I think it was around the areas of Namirembe or something. And this video broke
yes.
my heart because I saw the reactions and the commentary that followed
Mm,
the video. And it just showed so much, ignorance and also just so many snide comments that were thrown at this girl. One of the recent concerns is the prevalence of drug use among the youth. Back in the
mm,
day, you would hear people saying, it was even whispered if somebody had alcohol or someone was going to drink alcohol. It was whispered. But now reports are coming from parents that hard drugs are finding their way from schools into parents' homes. And they're wondering what is
mhm.
happening in the spaces that we're entrusting our children, not just even in schools, but also within the slum areas. This is within the slum areas and well-known trap houses, places like Bakuli, Chisenyi, Namuongo. I want you to share what you believe is attributing to the rise of the use of alcohol and drugs among the youth that we're seeing today.
The first is accessibility. These phones of ours, they are good and they are very good communication devices. Not only are they good communication devices, they explain everything you want to know. Ask a question, it's getting even worse now with AI. Ask, how can I be a thug? And it will give you exactly how you can do it. Even give them your location and tell them in my culture or in my surroundings, and it will do the research and give you everything exactly what to know. A few years ago, I had a client in treatment for drug abuse, and he was a cook. First, he told me he developed the desire to be a cook by watching Bad. There was this series called, was it Bad?
Breaking Bad,
I
yes.
think it's called Bad.
Breaking
Breaking
Bad,
Bad,
yes.
yes. Yeah, he says, I just loved it, although it seemed at the time it was just, a movie. But then he discovered that you can actually conjure up your own drugs. And so he would just Google everything and he would get the ingredients and he became a cook, you know? So there are things like those which are they are scary, by the way. But young people are creative. They can do whatever they need to get done. This same person said they would communicate with somebody. It was when he was in a boarding school. And so at a particular time, say at 5 p.m., this guy would get his ingredients and push them over the wall in a certain corner of the school. So for him, he would come from class straight, pick them, and they don't even reach dorm. When he picks them, then he goes and fixes his thing, whatever, and then delivers to his people in school. And he was making money. And this is a guy who would rent rooms in Munyonyo. Very interesting. Affordability. These things are affordable, especially when you see. I remember someone telling me that they could get kachuri for 5K. I don't
Yes,
know if people know
yes.
what
It was
kachuri
actually
is.
very cheap back in
And I'm like,
2020, 2021.
yes. And I'm like, 5K? They're like, yeah, now it's ice. Everyone is talking about ice. We call it the zombie drug,
Yes.
methamphetamine. Everyone is talking about ice. And interestingly, one boy was arrested. He was taken into police and he handed over what he had in his pocket to the police. And they kept his ice for him. So when I when they were releasing him, and I see because they sent me to go and pick him from there. So I went, talked to the police, dealt with the situation, and then they're handing him back his stuff. And I see them giving him
What?
his. Yes, they didn't even know it themselves. They didn't know what it was. He told them it
This
is
is
his
the
medicine.
police.
They were for what? This is the police.
They did
You
not
know,
know what ice
they gave
was.
him back his. For him, he told them it was medicine for, I don't know, ulcers or something like that. So again, it takes us to the beginning. We need to teach people this thing. So it gets really scary when you see that it's so affordable. People don't even know what they are dealing with. It's fun. Young kids today want to have a nice party. Therefore, they will choose to have the weed cakes, the weed cookies, the gummy bears, and even for the unsuspecting, they will give them the cake, or they will find a way to give it to them just because they want the party to have vibe and everybody is talking about it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes, yes,
therefore, some of the kids don't even know what they're taking. You get? We used to see these things in movies when they would have this big bowl of punch and
yes.
then they would dip in a spoon. And,
And
now
also
it's in
the
cakes
wheat
and
brownies as well in movies. Wheat brownies.
brownies. So they are all, people have gotten creative now. Even bread, it's even in bread, even in burgers. People don't know where to stop. This is 2025, you know. So it is so unfortunate that the affordability and the accessibility and the creative minds, young people are very creative. This cook used to get different mixtures, Valium, I don't know, benzos, and then he would just mix. He didn't even care which proportions. He just knew Valium makes you feel like
That
this
is a
makes you feel
very
like this,
dangerous
crushes them.
combination.
Extremely dangerous. Then he would try it himself, how it feels. This is good. You know? And then would say it's an avenue to make money. Now, if you add the pleasure that they get from using to the money they can earn from it, it becomes very enticing.
That's
And so
true.
many people continue using even after they've come out of treatment, not because they wanted to continue using, but they get exposed to it even when they want to stop because they want to continue dealing it. It's easy, quick money. And if they catch you, you'll most likely only thing you'll do is lose your drug. Someone will come and bail you out, and then they let you go, and you go straight back to where you got it from. And then tell the chaps that, man, you guys, they took my what? They took my loot. You get?
My stash.
So my stash.
The stories are endless, and it doesn't change the fact that the challenging realities of substance use among the youth require immediate action. For many people, this isn't an easy topic. Maybe they know somebody who's struggling with addiction. Maybe they too are struggling with addiction. But still, it's a vital one that needs to be spoken about. In Kampala, with a thriving nightlife, the concept of enjoyment has been woven so intricately into our social fabric. It makes it nearly impossible for someone to escape alcohol and drugs. Being someone who also struggled with alcohol for nearly 15 years, I strongly believe that every young person deserves a chance to live a healthy, fulfilling life free from the grip of addiction. Here I ask 3 questions. 1. Can we create a focus on school-based programs around drug awareness and community-based initiatives which target at-risk youth and their families? 2. Can we put in place effective drug policies and regulations? Are law enforcement agents educated or in the know about the drugs that are on the market and how to approach perpetrators in possession of drugs? 3. How can we foster collaboration between schools, religious leaders, law enforcement, healthcare providers, community organizations, and families to develop a coordinated approach to drug use? If anything we've discussed today resonated with you, especially if you're struggling yourself, do remember that you are not alone. There is hope and there is help. BekundaCare Consults specializes in substance use prevention and addiction consultancy with compassionate professional support to guide you on the path to recovery. You can get in touch through 0766 529 190 or 0709 791 860. Don't wait. That first step is the bravest one that you will ever take. Let's continue this conversation in our communities, in our homes, and even in our hearts. That's it for this episode. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Coffee First. I'd like to hear from you. If anything stood out to you during this episode, please go ahead and leave a comment. You can also catch up with all episodes on AfriPods, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.